We've got a lot of folks on here tonight. We have 43 already. We're doing really good for attendance on this particular talk, and because of that, I'm going to keep it up. Because it seems like people want to be with us. I did want to start a new format tonight, where if you're prepared to, you can bring in a paper, something you've read, preferably not on the internet or on Instagram or Twitter, but on some kind of scientific journal or something, or you have some question about our last presentation from our friend Christina Grosinger, who is an expert on pheromones in the colonies, among other things. She's got a lot of interesting scientific background, and or a tool that you have recently purchased and want to show to the group. So, it's an attempt to get everybody a little deeper into what questions occur to them during the course of the month, and that they want to air out in Bee Talks. This is a very safe format for you, because we accept every kind of question without any judgment. Except if it comes from Ralph. Is Ralph on? If it comes from Ralph, he gets a little bit of he usually gets a little bit of a tickle, but otherwise it's a pretty fair format. So let's get started. So I'm gonna.
What about the tickle?
There he is. Hey Ralph, and I knew it. See, my friend, my buddy. You're in the. I know you're here, right?
Bah. I'm
See,
here till next week, and then it's off to California.
I know. You lose a little mental strength on that trip, right? I mean, it seems like when you're in California, you're kind of poppy seedish, and like
I
that.
lose a lot.
Yeah, you can use California does that too.
Yep.
All right. Okay, we're doing well. So we're going to start with our bloom calendar, and to open with our bloom calendar, we do have an unusual event that you can hear from Paul. Paul, why don't you take your speaker off and tell folks, or turn your speaker on and tell folks what it is you saw.
I saw 2 days in a row honeybees bringing in pollen.
And when were those 2 days?
It was Wednesday and today.
How about that? Pollen.
On Wednesday, I saw light yellow pollen, and today I saw orange pollen, just like my shirt.
Yeah, well, orange pollen. I'm going to say that's a daisy, probably somewhere in a floral shop. But when I said this to you, you said there's nothing like that around your
Nothing
area.
like that, and no.
Yeah, so it's a mystery. Well, where your pollen source is from. I tracked that down. It might be someplace where there's a stone wall and a little some floral stuff out, but you've seen a lot of it come in.
More on Wednesday than I did today.
Yeah, amazing. All right.
I saw quite a bit on Wednesday, to my surprise.
Yeah.
And then today it was 4, 5, 6 degrees colder.
Yeah.
But I saw orange pollen coming in.
There you go.
In orange, we had light yellow coming in today.
Ah, see
there. Yeah. See that? The people are.
It's a miracle in early December.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, my bloom calendar is not that good, but it will be going forward, because I think I'm going to add these little anecdotal remarks to it so that we keep it current. I don't remember ever seeing pollen this late. Maybe some stuff from millet seed, out of a bird feeder or something like that. But pollen this late, it's orange pollen, I would say has to be Shasta daisy, but who knows?
Yeah, but my Shasta daisies and even my Montauk daisies are all gone.
We're all done. Yeah.
I mean, they've been done for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? Where they could have been getting it is I have several perennial mums that bloom and they're all over, early in the fall when they start blooming, and sometimes those perennial mums, continue on in a minimized fashion later in the season, but still, it is early December. We've had some killing frosts.
But mums, bees work certain varieties of mums. So,
Yep.
So
And the mums I plant are the perennial ones, not the ones that you get at the fashionable stores that, big balls of stuff.
yeah. So you're probably good. Amazing. All right, cool. So
Dandelions have been blooming.
go ahead, Michael. What?
Dandelions, I've been seeing them here and there.
They didn't quit this year, did they? They went all summer and they stayed out. And they generally put out pollen for almost all the time, and then they do put out a little bit of nectar now and then also. So it is a pollen plant for bees early in the spring. So that could, it's not exactly orange though, but it might look a little darker because as bees carry pollen back to the colony, they mix even before they start to carry it. They mix whatever, a little bit of their honey stomach, the contents of their honey stomach, on those pollen grains while they swipe them off their body and put them on in their pollen basket, because they have to increase the viscosity of that pollen so it sticks to their hind leg all the way back to the colony. If they didn't do that, then it would just fall off. But it doesn't, because they adjust it for stickiness and viscosity. And there's a little pollen pin on that basket that holds everything nice and stable so that they can fly back to the colony with it. And once they get back to the colony, of course, they go into a place where they're collecting pollen and kick that little pellet off their hind leg and try to get it into a cell. Most of the time they make it, but a lot of times they don't. And you can see that those wayward pollen pellets down on the land under bottom board when you look for them. So it's not a perfect biological adaptation, but it works about 95% of the time, I'd say. And most of that pollen gets used. Now, why are bees collecting pollen this time of year? Good question. I mean, it should be the end of brood rearing. I would say at this point we're looking at December 8th. If they're still raising brood at this point, I doubt that they are, but I guess it could be. Or they're just storing pollen because they do it. That's another thing that is sort of a mystery, but happens. Sometimes colonies will plug up cells with pollen, way beyond the time when they need it. All right. Okay, so that's the bloom calendar. I think all of the witch hazel's gone, but there might be some secluded parts deep in the forests where there's some natural native witch hazel that's still out. I showed last month that it was in bloom full in my yard, but I have lots of sun back in my yard where the witch hazel actually grows. And but it could be that it's out in some other shaded parts of the forests. All right, let's move on let's do our advertisements for CBA. I'm sure all of you know about our events, but we do have an event page. Paul, do you want to share that or just read it?
How about if I read it?
Okay, good enough.
So we all know that in January, we have 4 Saturdays, January 7th to the 28th for our bee school. So 4 sessions running 10 a.m. to 12 noon. And you can register by going online. Let's see for our workshops.
Well, we don't have any workshops.
Nothing for
bees.
December. Yeah, nothing work there. And what else do we have?
Guest speakers.
Guest speakers. I have to, oh, here we are. I guess, is the first one?
The first one is in February.
February, right. Okay, so in February, we have a talk with Dr. Noah Wilson-Rich, Beekeeping with Impact, February 16th at 6:30. And then March 16th, we have one with Dr. Heather Matilla,
wonderful biologist and great beekeeper.
She's going to talk on giant hornets and honeybee defenses.
Yeah.
And then in April 6th, we are doing a talk with Dr. Scott McArt.
Yes.
What can you do to improve pollinator health?
Mm-hmm.
So there it is. And then we have our bee talks in between. There's no scheduled speaker for January.
No,
Right?
because we have bee school.
But we have bee talks.
Yep, we do.
Bee talk on January 7th, bee talk on February 9th, and bee talk on March 9th.
Yeah, just we're going to keep going all, right through the year on the second Thursday of every month.
Thursday of the month, right?
And so we have special guests at our bee school this year. Dewey Karen is coming back from Bolivia to do our introductory piece where he goes over equipment and the beginning of beekeeping and so on and so forth. And then we have Randy Oliver coming in as a guest instructor, and he'll cover some basic aspects of beekeeping and answer your questions. And then we have Mark Creighton that is going to do our last Saturday, which is our session where we go over all of the rules and regs and some diseases about bees. I'll be doing the hive setup piece in biology, and that should round us all out. All right, so that's what we got on our agenda. We've got lots of folks that have already joined to be part of our bee school, and it's early, so we still have a ways to go before we get there. Although it'll creep right up on us. But so I expect 60 or 70 or 80 people to come. So if you want to join us, please do. You can learn something even if you're not a new beekeeper, and you want to just come and ask guys like Randy Oliver and Dewey Karen wonderful questions, or even hard questions for them to answer. Just, so your participation would be welcome. All right. So we're at that point now where if there's anybody that has something that they want to bring forward for us to look at in terms of a new piece of equipment or a article they've read somewhere or something that they're confused about in the literature about bees, just go ahead and you can put it in the witch hazels. So let me look at the chat here for a minute. Okay, so there's lots of people that were bringing that pollen was coming in on, and bringing in bright yellow pollen. Oh, cool. Witch hazel is a plant that they make witch hazel from. It's a great little plant. Look it up. I've had a question about OA vaporization. So this is going to dovetail in, I think, with what Armando wants to talk about tonight. So do you want to say anything about that, Armando? About what you're, yeah, there you go.
No, I'll let you do it, Bill, because you used the machine. I didn't.
Okay, okay. So, so a new piece of equipment that's on the market is called the Instant Vap. Let me share my screen so you can take a look at this thing. It's for OA vaporization. All right. Can you guys see that? Somebody will have to answer yes.
Yes, Bill, thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, there it is. It's wonderfully constructed out of stainless steel, and it's innovation. There's two innovations with it. First of all, it's battery operated, and it works very well as a battery operated device. I use it about 16 times since Armando purchased it and asked me if I would run it through its paces, and so I did. I did a few interesting experiments with it. My first experiment was to see how long it took for the unit itself to come up to temperature in order for this particular unit to work. Let me see if there's anything else on here that you can see, except for the side view. It has to go up to 400 and no. Has to go up to 445 degrees, and on the back side of it is where you would read that. Well, all they doing is showing the side views, huh? No, there's a back view. Oh. We don't want to watch videos. All right, the back of it back in here, has a little display that tells you what temperature the unit is at. When you plug your battery into this Instant Vap, it will start to heat up. It has 2 burners in the front over here, and they'll start to heat up, and they get up to 445 degrees. Once that happens, and that takes about 2 minutes, maybe 2.5 minutes, it will maintain a temperature of 445 degrees rather quickly. In other words, once you use it, put a dose of oxalic acid in it and vaporize a colony, you look back at the little thermostat readout on the back of that panel, and it dips down to below 430 degrees, but comes right back up to 445. And you have to be patient at the end of the heating cycle, because it heats up really quickly in the beginning, but then when it gets close to about 440, it goes in very small increments so it doesn't overheat the unit. All right, so that's a really interesting software adaptation that it has, or feature that it has. All right, so then this little injector here is the interesting thing. That comes out of this unit, and it actually is like a little needle. Let me see if I can show you something in that video that he's doing there really briefly. There it is. See, there's that little, see, and what he did, he's doing a little test. Can everybody see that video?
Yep, we can see
Yep.
it.
Okay, I'm going to go back over it again one more time. So in the beginning here, he's just showing you how that injector filled with oxalic acid is used, and then he puts it in the hot unit, pushes the top down, and a bunch of acid comes out, right? He's really risking his health by not having any safety gear on. That's why I didn't really want to show you this, because it's not something you can do without safety gear on, especially a full face mask and breathing apparatus, that is, and gloves. And if you're going to do this in the summertime, you should have a long sleeve shirt on, because oxalic acid fumes can actually burn your skin also. All right, so that's how that little tube works. And then that little dial on the top will allow you to put in a variable dose. So you can go from 1 gram of oxalic acid all the way up to 4. So what I did was I set it on 2 grams, and then I plunked it into the oxalic acid, and then I measured the weight of the dose, and it comes out heavy almost every time. So if you have it right on 2 grams, you get about 2.8 grams, actually. Anyway, in the unit that Armando and I were checking out. And so really, it's a very simple unit. It has a couple of really sharp parts on it you have to be aware of. These little spikes here help it grip the wood landing board or the front of the hive, keep it in place so it supports its own weight. And then when you flip the handle down, you can almost let go of it, and it'll stay there and just pump the oxalic acid to the hive. So it really works kind of cool. And the advantage, again, is that it is not cord connected, which is a major impediment to other units that require AC or a car battery that you drag around and try to figure out how to hook up to the battery and so on and so forth. So yeah, really great unit. Any questions about that unit? I haven't covered every aspect of it. Oh, I do want to mention one thing though. Once you have that little plunger loaded, it can drop oxalic acid around until you get it into that tube. So let me show you that again. So these are the wrong video. All right, so watch him now. See it's a little acid on the top, and see how a little bit of acid fell out of that and got on the surface of the vaporizer. If you get a lot of that on, it'll vaporize that stuff right back at you. So you have to make sure you get that little dispenser, this little dispenser, which comes out of that tube. What I did was, in order to get it so that it was very stable, the compound, the oxalic acid was very stable in that tube, I just kept plunking it down a few times, and I packed it in nice and tight. That way, none of it spilled before I got it in to the opening on that top tube. And Okay, any questions about that? Makes oxalic acid vaporization very,
Um,
very easy to do.
This is Lauren. I had a question.
Yeah.
Hi, you said it, went in, like it measured a little heavy. And
Yes, it
although,
does.
and although we are not supposed to do more than the recommended 2 grams, like we wouldn't break the law, but that researcher found that more was better and not harmful.
That's Carmen Jack. Yes, he's somebody I traveled with him in Thailand for 26 days. Excellent scientist. And and him and I went over this research in detail. And it's very simple that the way the labels reads right now, with all of the tests that were done, the 2-gram dose doesn't seem to be as effective as, say, 4 grams would be. But the label hasn't changed. And like you said, Lauren, none of us would ever entertain, even temporarily, the thought that we might use a dose a little bit higher to be more effective at killing the mites and not harm the bees. Isn't that right?
This new unit,
Yeah.
could you put 4 in, or would you just do 2 doses in a row if you were?
You can put 4 in. You can put 4 in.
Oh,
Yes, it has a
that-
cartridge that cartridge will allow you to fill it with 4 grams of oxalic acid. And my guess, I didn't check what that actually is. That might be closer to 5 grams of oxalic acid. Those, I didn't weigh that.
yeah.
But I weighed the 2-gram dose and it came out to 2.8. So I'm guessing the 3-gram dose would be a little bit over that. I mean, I personally, which is, I try my best to keep my varroa practices in line with what the EPA recommends. And of course, sometimes I slip and more goes in, and I try to get it out, but it's too late, and then I get more oxalic acid in there than I should, I guess. But I wouldn't hesitate to try this out. Now, my question for the group is, we have some hurdles to get through before we can actually offer this, but I'm wondering if this is like something that folks might want to rent, like they rent an extractor from us and use on their own colonies and bring it back, just like you do the extractors, right? So it's almost exactly the same as renting an extractor. It's a little bit more dangerous than an extractor, but you could put your hand in an extractor, I guess, and hurt it. But if you went through a little safety course with us, and I'm thinking that it might be a valuable thing for folks that want to use something like this and don't want to make the investment, because I hid the price on you a little bit, but if you'll notice, it's $495. All right. So it's a heavy investment, but
That's without the battery.
that's without the battery. Yeah. And I happen to have plenty of batteries that will operate it. So me and my personal, I wouldn't have to use it. I wouldn't have to buy batteries, but guaranteed dosage, guaranteed oxalic acid, guaranteed temperature. And man, it only took me 6 or 7 minutes to do 4 colonies. Very, very and then I did that day I did 12. And that only took me a half hour getting set up and vaporizing everything. And then
Bill, the tube has to be refilled before each use.
oh yeah. You gotta plunge that little plunger down on top. Yeah. Thanks, Bill. Yeah, that's not quite obvious. It doesn't hold the dose. All right. Anyway. All right, what do we got?
Bill?
Yes.
So this is Gerald. I have a question. Is there some sort of pipe that goes from the device into the hive, or do you just aim the vapor emissions?
No. Yeah, you got, okay, good. These are great questions. All right, so let me share that screen again. See, this is what you see when you notice stuff, you just forget it.
And is that part long enough?
Oh yeah. No, you can't see the length of it here. Let me see if I can show you the length on this other image. See, it's quite long. See it? And it will go into any front entrance, or if you're ambitious, you drill a hole in the back of your bottom board, not into your hive. That's a very dangerous thing to do. Drilling a hole into your hive body can get you into a lot of trouble with a vaporizing device, because you could push the vaporizing device against an end bar in the frame and not know it, because you've drilled a hole near an end bar. And if that's the case, then you will prevent the vapor from coming out of that little chute right there, and it could blow the device back at you. So you have to make sure it's only in the bottom board, and you got 3/4 of an inch of space there. So you can actually drill a little hole in there, small, very small, so that this just barely fits in it. And then the good thing about this device, it has these prongs here, and as you push it in, it'll grab the wood on the bottom board and just hang there nice and firm. And you just put the plunger in, plunge it down, and every single bit of your oxalic acid will go in. Now, in my case, I have sleeves over my colonies, so I have 3/4 of an inch that I couldn't put this. I put it through the front entrance on my colonies. I didn't drill a hole in the back. So 3/4 of an inch comes out to about here. So I had about a 1/2 inch inside the colony, and I got some vapor to come out the sides, but not a lot. Most of it went right in the colony.
Great, thank you.
No problem. All right, cool. What else we have here? So what do we got for, let's try to clear some of
Excuse
these.
me, Bill, did you have to hold the device the whole time it was vaporizing?
You don't, you do. I did. It doesn't get warm, but the handle doesn't get warm, but the body of the unit near the front does get warm. So you have to be very cautious about touching that, because that is hot. I mean, you know, that's hot enough to vaporize acid. So it's probably up in a 200-degree range. I didn't check that temperature of that outside surface. I know the heating vessels inside are up to 445 degrees. So that's pretty hot. You know, that's higher than you want to make your Christmas cookies at, right?
Thank you.
Bill, Corinne Fox is interested in talking about the HiveGuard 3D print thymal hive entrance created by a young lady from Greenwich, Connecticut.
Let's put that up. Oh, I saw that. Yeah, so let's get a picture of that and see if we can talk about that. Great.
I'll search for a picture. Hang on.
Okay. Question about over that. I did treat last Wednesday in my hives and saw from one, this is from TD, Teresa. And she's saying that she saw from one hive quite a few dead bees outside. Good sign. And the next day, I'm pretty certain that I did it properly using 1 gram per box. Is it normal to have some die off with oxalic acid? No, it's not. Also, I have read that I should do 3 treatments 5 days. You don't need to do that kind of treatment regime this time of year, because likely your bees are broodless. Oxalic acid is only advertised for use in a broodless period, and we should be in one right now. If you want to be absolute certain, you can, let me see, I'm just letting folks in here. You can wait until the winter solstice and do it. But we're getting such good warm weather for vaporization. A lot of people are doing it right now. These days, 50 degrees to cluster. Well, you heard folks say their bees are flying, so they're currently not in cluster. And if they're broodless, it's a perfect time because the bees are all spread out in the colony, and you can get good mite kill. But the 5 to 7 day apart treatments are not proven to be effective during a time when there's brood. I was just testing the device, and so I did a couple colonies. I did them 2 or 3 times in a row, and you don't get any ill effects from oxalic acid even when you do it at that level. All right, did we get one of the HiveGuard things?
I have a poor one of the HiveGuard. There isn't a lot of information because I expect that the young lady is trying to make a lot of money out of it. Because if it's a thing that she cracks, good for her. But there isn't a lot of data on it.
All right. Corinne, do you have, can you share something about it?
Hi, I'm Corinne. I just moved here from Denver, Colorado. Beekeeper out there for 4 years. Very different out here. Looking
Yes.
to start the spring. So I got a lot more against me as a beekeeper out here. It's pretty dry out there. Pluses and minuses all around. Anyways, I have 4 great mentors in Denver that sent me an article on the hive guard. It's a young lady, I think she's in her 20s, from Connecticut. Fell into beekeeping, but she did a 3D print of a hive guard entrance, almost like a hive guard when we're going into later months to protect our hives against hornets and such. Basically, it is a 3D printed guard that goes in and has little holes. And as the bees pass through, it has thymol on it. So every bee that enters the hive gets a little bit on their body and brings it into the hive, and it's supposed to effectively treat it that way. I don't know too much more about it. I thought you guys might have heard on it. But
when you started to explain it, I read the sort of print material about it. There's not much, but I read the print material, and
Yeah,
it's
she
exactly
spoke at
how
the
you
back-
explained it. Go ahead.
She spoke at the Backyard Beekeepers this past year, and 2 years ago, I did a trial with one of her devices. I wonder about the, I don't know whether she's done to come up with recharging the device.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, like anything else, before we would accept something like this as beekeepers, I mean, it would be prudent for us to make certain that there are some, peer-reviewed studies or some kind of study, give us some kind of indication that this actually works. In other words, a control colony and colonies with the thymol guard. I've seen this also with ApiGuard. So there's also other treatment modalities that are done the same, other treatment chemicals that are applied, that were proposed to apply the same way. Little doses, micro doses at a time, with, when the bees go through these little entrances. I'm not sure if we wanted, I'm not sure what the efficacy would be. That'd be the only thing, Corinne. We'd have to just figure out what the efficacy is and whether or not it's worth using.
That
How
makes
long
sense.
how long is it on the hive?
Go ahead, Corinne.
I was just going to say that makes sense. I mean, being a young beekeeper with not a lot of experience and a good idea with good intentions means one thing, but tried and true is another.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad to hear you say that. That's exactly what a new beekeeper should be saying. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we know that thymol is efficacious, so it's just a question of method of delivery.
Yeah, and the method of delivery is, for all of these different chemicals, is key to how they work. And it might be that thymol doesn't work at all at a microdose and needs to be put into the colony in its tested cylinder. That nice little kind of foil packet comes in, and because I'm not sure if it's applied at all to bees. Bees usually ignore it. They don't go near it, and it sublimates in the colony somehow. So who knows what's going on with it in terms of, you use it a lot, right, Ralph? You use thymol, huh?
Yes, I use the ApiLife VAR, which is an impregnated.
Yep.
It's that floral oasis type of thing.
Yeah.
So it's not the tin. That's different. That's EpiGuard.
That's ApiGuard, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Do you know if the USDA is working on changing the label? No, they're not. Above one, they've got a lot of pressure on them, but they're not currently doing that. Can you come instead approve the glycerin pads and oxalic? Well, I can comment on that for us, Kevin. So I wish my friend Jose was on the call tonight, but I got an email a little bit back from Ralph, who's on this call here, about the New York State's approval of what they refer to as a 2EE. Now, a 2EE is a little kind of loophole that you can use if you want to use a pesticide that's used for a specific pest off-label, and that you use it only in a controlled area. So when I got the information from Ralph, and it was basically the New York State rep, the New York bee inspector that sent the message around. Isn't that right, Ralph?
Yes.
Yeah, I called her. We had a long discussion, and I looked over her 2EE that she proposed to her Department of Environmental Protection, and her Department of Environmental Protection approved it. And it is basically the use of Randy Oliver's Swedish sponges and the oxalic acid and glycerin dip. All right, so it's approved for use in, as we speak, in all of New York State. And also, a nice sideline is that Vermont did the same thing. They applied to their own Department of Environmental Protection with a 2EE, and and it's also now approved for use in Vermont. So I was sitting there cold and reading an article on soccer or something, and I thought, why not just try a 2EE for Connecticut? So I did. I got a hold of I found out who to get a hold of in the Department of Environmental Protection. As I approached them as a stakeholder, explaining to them that I represented the Connecticut Beekeepers Association, that we had members that were interested in this application method. And they said to me last Friday, that they have no problem with it. So they put it through legal, and it's now in legal's hands. And it went through legal in Massachusetts and in Vermont, and it passed through their legal. So it's possible that it will pass here. But we have somebody who works with the DEEP as an attorney, and that's Jose. So Jose is helping not influence the process, but manage the workflow piece so that we get it out. So I'm kind of hopeful that based on what occurred in New York and what occurred in Vermont, that we will get this 2EE. Now, it's way different than a label change. It doesn't have anything to do with label changes at all. It's a mechanism that's allowed by the EPA to modify a label, as long as the label doesn't specifically say you can't use it that way. So for instance, if the label that's currently approved for oxalic acid said you cannot mix it with glycerin and use it on a Swedish sponge, then you wouldn't be able to apply for it. But in this case, there's really no restriction on the packaging, the label, the label that says you can't do it that way. All right.
Bill?
So that's where we're at.
I'm just reading the 2EE, and the approval in New York was for 50% AP-bioxol.
AP-bioxol is the only approved oxalic acid for use in colonies.
Right. So that's what the 2EE is specific to, that particular product. And then I'm not sure what the actual
That's oxalic acid
dosage of how many grams of oxalic acid are in that bioxol product.
AP-bioxol is 99.9% pure oxalic acid. AP-bioxol is just another name for oxalic acid. It's like
oh, it's not proprietary?
No. It's made by the people who make the Savarin, that make the wood bleach. All right, so it's the same exact product as wood bleach. It's sold in hardware stores and has been for the last 200 years. All right, so they're the only manufacturer of oxalic acid. But in order to get the product registered, Better Bee had to say, this is what, they have to, according to the EPA, they had to approve a product. So they packaged it, named it, and now you can technically you can only use that particular brand of oxalic acid. And I wouldn't suggest you buy anything at your hardware store for a third of the price or 1/5 of the price and use it. I mean, that wouldn't be right. So, so don't get confused by that. That's just oxalic acid. So, and if you look on the 2EE for New York, you'll see the formula for heating up the oxalic acid and whatever we have to do. Okay, cool. Yes, I do. Kevin, to answer Kevin's question, did I feel that the application with the Instant Vap was safe if you wear the proper PEE? Absolutely was. You need to ensure that people clean out the unit. No, there's really nothing to clean out, Dale, but talking about the Instant Vap again. There's really nothing to clean out, but the tube runs at a very low temperature at the tip. So oxalic acid doesn't accumulate there. What does on the unit itself, what does clog a little, I found, is the little insertion tube. That gets caked up with a little bit of burnt on oxalic acid. And I'm assuming that if you allowed that to continue to gather on the plunger, it would affect your gram dosage, number one, but then it gets awkward to use. So I had to clean that after a little while.
Bill, when you use that and use it for the front entrance, did you use the device and then close off the front entrance for 10 minutes afterwards?
That's what you're supposed to do.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so anything else in there?
Hey, Bill, I want to share something real quick with
Sure,
people using oxalic acid and when
Yeah.
they're cleaning their tools. And I found this out by accident. When you clean it with hot water, it might start to outgas. so duh.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm glad you reminded me, Kirk, be careful with that. So you got 120-degree water or something like that, or maybe even have hotter water, domestic hot water. But yeah,
It caught me by surprise.
that'll be, well, what caught me by surprise and choked me is I should have mentioned this. Takes a very long time for this unit to cool down. All right, so I'm glad you mentioned this because I forgot it. I brought it down to the basement to make a video out of it. And I noticed these little gossamer woofs of smoke coming out, hardly visible, coming out of the top of that tube 30 minutes after I had taken the plunger out. And I got a whiff of them and it set me back. You know,
Well,
I actually got a whiff of them.
Yeah, I'm one that drills the holes in the backs of the, the bottom boards.
Yes.
And I put towels in the front.
Front entrance, yeah.
And you'll find out when you bring those towels in the house, yeah, they still have oxalic acid in them.
Yeah. So that's really good feedback. That's really good feedback. Yeah, you got to be careful with that stuff. So I got some in the cut when I was doing this, and it sanitized it for sure. So what Armando purchased along with his unit is a 60 millimeter ammo box, which is a standard ammo box you can buy anywhere. And what I would recommend is if you use a unit like this, and if this is going to come with the instructions, if we do manage to say, we'll let you use this thing if you want to rent it from us. You lock it in that thing until it's dead cold. And then, so you can stop using it, putting it in there, shut it. And an ammo box is waterproof. So it's also vapor proof. And it's really safe inside there. All right. So that's glad we sort of fleshed out all the things I wanted to tell Armando when he comes on Friday to pick his unit up. All right. What else do we got here?
Teresa has a question about CT law regarding the sale of honey.
Okay. What is it?
Yeah, what is it? What are the laws around selling honey?
Oh, what are the... Okay,
let's start there, Bill.
Okay, you can sell anything you want in your front yard. All right, so there are no laws for you to package and sell your honey on a little stand outside there with one of those trust boxes, and you can sell as much as you want. You can sell as much as you want, label it any way you want or not label it, doesn't matter. But if you sell it for retail sales, in other words, if you're then a supplier like I am, there's a bunch of regulations. It gets really complicated at that point. I had to go through the process to become a licensed food manufacturer, which meant that I had to put together a commercial kitchen. All right, I'm going to mute you, Teresa, for a minute here. Thank you. I had to go through the process of becoming a food manufacturer with a sterilized commercial kitchen, where I process everything in that kitchen. It's part of my attached garage, but it has washable walls, a washable floor, drains, the right pumping equipment, the right sanitation buckets, everything. All right, so you have to produce the product according to federal and local guidelines, and then your label has to comply with the national labeling code for honey, which requires the name, a contact, the amount of the net weight of the product. Let's see what else is on there. There's supposed to be a warning on it that it doesn't contain any. I don't think I think that one was rescinded.
Bill, I've dropped a link to the state regulations for labeling of honey in the.
Okay, great. All right, you can do that.
Yep.
Thanks. Steve.
Also, continuation question: do you need a license for sale at a farmer's market?
You'll need you need all the at a farmer's market. You're off your property, so you will need a license, meaning you have to be a legitimate producer of honey. Like I said, I have a food manufacturer's license, and that covers my sale of honey, and I could sell it to Big Y and all. You go to a farmer's market and you are in big liability territory. Over there, they're going to make you carry a $1 million liability. If they're a legitimate farmer's market, they'll make you carry $1 million in liability, because the farmer's market can be liable for any product that they sell. Yeah, you can. So just to be clear, you can't sell it anywhere except in your own property.
McAllister Keeley McAllister. I have a question regarding winterization. With our warmer weather, my hives have been much more active in December this year than the previous 2 years of beekeeping. Are they going through their soars they need for winter too early? Should I be feeding now?
No, I don't think you should be testing, seeing how much those colonies weigh, and for you to figure out whether or not they're going through their winter stores or not will require your observation, even if you just go out and heft the colony. If you go out and heft your colony and it's light, then yeah, you would have to feed. And if it's light now, they're going to have real trouble going through the winter. You'd have to put supplemental food on all winter long. I doubt that they're light now. They're flying around, but flight and warming a colony are different ways of using their winter stores. The little bit of flight that they have going on now doesn't use quite as much stores, or anywhere near as much stores, as thermoregulation does. So you don't have to be that concerned that if your bees are in like a loose cluster formation, they're not doing any heating. They're living off of stored body fat, a little bit of carbohydrate that they get, but they don't really need much when they're not stressed by a lot of cold, right? So I wouldn't be too concerned that your bees, because they're flying, they're using, it seems logical, but it's not true. Bees will use less honey when they are in a little loose configuration like they are now, the actual optimal temperature for the least use of stores is around 42 degrees. And that's what the big honey producers and beekeepers use up in Canada and all over in North Dakota. They built these big warehouses. They keep them all at 42 degrees. And the bees are not in tight cluster, but they use the least amount of stores at that temperature. So we're right around that temperature now. So you're getting a little bit of indoor storage in the early part of the summer.
By hefting the colony, Bill, you literally mean putting your hand under the back and trying to tilt it forward
Lift
to
it,
judge the
right.
weight of it.
Right. And to make sure that you're feeling the weight of the colony. Yes, thanks, Dean. You have to lift it up with your body. And if you did that earlier in the fall, you would know where you're going in weight-wise, and then you'd be able to tell the difference. Right. So that's a good thing to do, is to heft your hives. You can do it all season long, just to feel what's going on. And you can feel really good when you can hardly lift it. Then you got a lot of stores. That's how my colonies were in October. You could hardly lift them. They were all packed with honey. They used a lot of those stores because they flew like crazy during November. But they were doing lots of other things. They were raising brood and everything like that. So.
What about backup? This is from Corinne Fox. What about backup homemade sugar fondant patties, just in case?
Yeah. So Corinne, we don't, out here on the East Coast, we don't use fondant as much as a lot of people use fondant. I'm just saying. I always discourage the use of fondant because of the process of making it. If you had fondant that was made enzymatically, in other words, the sugar inside that fondant cake was inverted with enzymes rather than heat, then I'd say, no problem with that fondant. And there's some folks that make that here in Connecticut, and you can get fondant patties that were made without the use of heat. They're very soft and they stay soft. But the sugar in it is inverted. In other words, it's split between its sucrose molecule, which is a disaccharide, is split into monosaccharides, which is the two sugars that bees use, glucose and fructose. So it's already done for them. We just use, I have, and in the last Bee Talks, we put up my link to sugar cakes, much easier to make. And if you needed to do some supplemental feeding at this point, or wanted to, just put them on there. I recommend that you follow the formula for sugar cakes. That way you're not baking or heating syrup on the stove to softball consistency with somewhere around 230 degrees. You have to work with all that hot liquid, try to figure out how to get it out of the pan and onto sheets. And, you can do it, but it's a lot of work for something when you could just make a sugar cake and be done with it.
Kevin, go.
Oh, this is Teresa. I was just wondering, I read about mountain feeding.
What kind of feeding?
Mountain feeding. I think it's called mountain feeding, where you just put.
It's the camp thing with sugar on newspaper.
Yeah, sugar on newspaper over the top. What do you think about that?
Well, you can do it that way. I wouldn't just put granulated sugar there, because it's so much easier to make a sugar cake. And then when you do that, it stays a little bit more structured, and the bees don't have to eat through paper to get at it. Mountain camp became popular because of the name, and the methodology is not inventive or creative in any way. So, it's not really a method of doing anything. People have been throwing, back in the day, old school beekeepers would take a 5-pound bag of sugar, when it was 5 pounds, and soak it in water, and then just plop that whole 5-pound bag right on the colony and let the bees eat through the paper and then get at the sugar. And it just stabilized a little bit. So there's really nothing innovative about putting sugar on paper. My friend Al Avatalo used to do it all the time, but we would spray it with water. we'd put sugar on top of newspaper, then spray that sugar with water. It gives it a little bit of, structure. All right.
I'm muted. Sorry. Keely McAllister, could you please put the sugar cake recipe on the website?
The sugar cake recipe is on the website.
I can't find it, but I'm looking for it. I'll find it.
Oh, you can't find it on our website?
Well, that's just because I'm trying to do too many things at once, Bill. I'm sure it's there.
Yeah.
Sylvie is asking, how cold can it be where we can still open the hive to put a candy board in?
Well, when you're opening up a hive in the wintertime, you have to be very, by the way, Corinne, you better pay attention to this because you have cold colonies out there in Colorado. We have cold and wet colonies here in the wintertime. So you have an objective, a goal, right? So you're going to say, okay, I'm going to put sugar candy board on this thing or whatever you're going to do, like candy board implies that you put fondant on an inner cover. That's what a candy board usually is. You can do that at almost any temperature you want, even when it's snowing. You just got to put it on the colony and close the colony right away. If you have the colony open for less than a minute, you will do no damage to that colony whatsoever. As a matter of fact, you can open up at almost any single temperature and be okay. Now there was a whole lot of talk back in the day. Bee lore was you never open up your colony in the wintertime. And the reason for that is that they believed back then that if you did that, you would kill your colonies, but it's not the case. They don't suffer for it. You'll break the propolis seal on the box, but if your colonies are have insulation around the sides, and if you've insulated the top a little bit, that propolis seal isn't as important as it is if you don't have any of those barriers to wind infiltration. So Ralph put it up there. Somebody, let me see. Where's my?
I linked to the recipe on the website too, Bill.
Oh, you found it?
Yeah, I thought I linked it. Maybe I didn't. No, I did. It's right above Ralph. All
right, so check that out. That's something I spent a lot of time putting together for questions like this. So.
Kevin McDonald commented, I use baking soda in winter to neutralize, baking soda in water to neutralize the oxalic acid that Kurt mentioned accumulates on entrance towels.
Yes, it's a good practice to do that. Have a base around. Now, whatever you use in this oxalic acid, it's always important to have water around that you can flush. Wash your hands off if you get some oxalic acid on it. It doesn't burn right away, but it will burn. You do not want to get the stuff in your eyes. Then you'd have to, when I worked in the telephone industry as an installer, my early career, we used to work with submarine batteries that off-gassed sulfuric acid and had battery acid all over the place. We had eye wash stations all around, and those eye wash stations were filled with a combination of water and a neutralizing agent like baking soda. All right, so at the specific rate that you could use in your eyes. So in this case, yeah, having that water next to you, a little bucket of water, and it has some baking soda in it would really help neutralize those towels and everything else. But you can't really pour that stuff in the unit, like the hot unit. You can't really douse it with baking soda. So, all right, Anthony is giving us a little. Take more sugar and try to get rid of it from the hive. Yeah, sometimes if you have to watch your winter feeding of granulated sugar or any other kind of sugar, actually, that bees will sometimes just remove it as if it's a foreign object and be gone with it. They just take it out as if it's doesn't belong there. And that way you'll find it outside the front of the colony. And you'll see newspaper out there where they'll tear the newspaper off and try to get that out of the colony. So some bees will use or treat granulated sugar as if it's just junk. All right, do we have any more questions? Anything from the floor? Okay.
Hey, Bill. Quick
Yes.
question. Yeah, absconded hives, where you come into hive and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
What's your thought? I mean, they beat small hive beetle. What's are you seeing an increase in that? I've noticed. I've been hearing a lot of reports. I've never seen it before. I mean, I've heard of it, but never seen it. But now I'm seeing more of it.
Well, Cliff, I don't, so if there were small hive beetles in there, they'd still be in there.
Okay.
So they don't go away. They don't leave with the colony. If they're successful in being able to get a colony to abscond, they stay and raise larvae, in that comb until it's just so disgusting you can't even take it anymore. So I doubt that it was small hive beetle in your case, because you'd see it.
Okay.
You'd see all of that. But absconding happens for a number of reasons. One is that, they've got a high level of non-parasitic action. So for instance, is there a skunk scratching on the colony every day? So they will move out of a colony and a nesting area if they're being predated in that way. In other words, just always being disturbed by something in the environment, like being shaken all the time or whatever. Sometimes a thymol treatment will get them to abscond because they don't get accustomed to the
Sure.
and they'll abscond for that reason. But one of the reasons that they sometimes disappear and there's no trace is that they've had an extremely high varroa level in that colony, and they have been predated by that pest, but you can see evidence of that also. Brood cells with open caps, lots of guanine in the cells, which is the excrement of varroa as they're developing inside cells. You can see that guanine. So so talk about it. What do you mean? What happened?
No, so for myself, so I had 2 hives this year. I've never had it before. This year I had 2 that did it. I've heard many. I've heard of others in the area that have also experienced it. For me, I mean, I had I was an absent beekeeper, so mite control was more of a challenge for me because I haven't been around. But I was just surprised to see it, and thinking of things that might influence it, whether it's small hive beetle, wax moths, or other things that have caused it. Somebody who in the area that I live had it. They did send me photos, and they clearly had larvae of small hive beetle with the legs up front and everything like that. So they showed me pictures to show that was probably their problem. But I just didn't know if there's other things. I mean, the concept, I hadn't thought about the concept of skunk or something else knocking against the hive is to cause them to leave.
Well, last year, if this trend continues, then we're going to have to try to figure it out a little bit better, because last year there was a rash of abscond. What was the plural for absconsions?
Yeah.
Sounds like something you stick in the ground, like stanchions. So a bunch of colonies absconded last year also during the drought, and I had a cockamamie theory. Abscondments. Yes. Okay. I had a theory about that last year, because I saw that in Africa, and they complained about it all the time. They didn't complain about it. It was just a way of life in Africa. Bees absconded in all the time because, our bees are basically all Western honeybees, all of them, even down from Africa. So they're all from the same basic genome. And those are migratory bees in Africa. They move around on the savanna. If there's no floral sources, they move to another ones. I think our bees have the same or similar hidden gene. And if you get the right circumstances, they might just leave because there's no water around, there's no this or that, because during that drought, when everything dried up, we got a lot of absconsions or people who said, hey, there's no bees in my colony anymore, and I took that as they absconded.
Sure.
So, yeah. So, so I don't know, Cliff, it seems like there's a growing number of people who find that.
Yeah, no, it's just interesting. I've heard of it, never seen it. This was the first year I saw it, so I was just curious for your thoughts.
Yeah, there's another one too that that you may encounter if you're lucky enough to witness. There's usurpation of colonies also, which occurs when another queen will send out her bees, and they essentially will mimic the hive odor of the colony that they're targeting, then begin a series of raids on that colony until they move the whole colony in toward it. Now, that's a very, very interesting biological behavior. I think it occurs a lot more than we know, and affects colonies, of course, same way. But absconsion's another one. Read about that one. That one's fun to read about.
Okay, will do. I appreciate that. It's interesting because I've heard about it, never seen it. So then I started thinking about, okay, kind of a cluster in the area. I was concerned about is there something being passed around at the flower that might be being passed from hive to hive, but appreciate
well
that.
I mean, I think everything's open for like, I don't poisonous nectar. I don't know. There's lots of things that it could be, because if there's no sign of disease, but every time I've seen it, there's been a sign of disease, except for once, because it does happen to me more often than I'd like, and that I'll come and I'll find nothing in a colony, and it's usually when the first cold strikes, and I'm thinking, well, okay, this is going to be, I'm going through it. Clearly, the colony's dead, and then I'll say, okay, there's going to be a real lump of dead bees on the bottom board, and there's nothing. So at some point during the first cold snap, these guys went somewhere. They went south because they looked good in October. Not good, but they're not usually a very strong colony in October that absconds in November. But they're gone, and no sign of anything around.
I had that with 2 laying hives.
What's that?
I had that happen, what seems to be absconding, with 2 laying hives this year. They were going in strong, and they had a great brood even late into the year. And then I went and checked on them, I don't know, probably almost a month ago. And gone.
No, there's nothing left. I mean,
stores, everything's cleared up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that could be that, that they got robbed out. Once a colony can get robbed to the extent where that's nothing that could have happened with Clifford too. Any other suggestions?
I still have stores in mind. That's what surprised me.
Yeah, that's a pain, isn't it? Yeah. It really is. Yeah. So, wow. All right.
If your bees leave, check the hive if you have a handful of bees left. A few years ago at the bee club, we found some hives with a handful of bees, and the queen was with them. So for whatever reason, the bees left their queen to go someplace else.
Yeah, and that would be the classic situation you'd find with, colony collapse disorder. A little bit of brood, the queen and a handful of bees. So,
yeah, it's interesting because I marked my queen, so she wasn't there. There was nothing. I mean, they assumed I left, so they left, I guess. But it was amazing that they were just so cleaned out.
Yeah, yeah. All right, that's a shame, but it happens.
Yeah.
Bill, Bill, Gail asked any feedback on using the black light to see eggs better. I asked that question. I haven't had a chance to try it yet. I don't know if anybody else has.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, there you can, it does work. So, I mean, it'll be a little bit easier to see. There's stuff on it. You can read about it. I don't participate in Bee Source, but every once in a while, I hear about conversations on there, and there was one on Bee Source about using black light to see bee eggs. So try it. So somebody's got to try that. Maybe I'll try it. I have. Do I have a black light? Yeah, I think I do. I'll try it. I could try it too, and see what happens. But I can see eggs. You get them. What they refer as image memory. Like, I didn't know this was a thing until I listened to a podcast on the Canadian Broadcasting Company station from a mycologist. And she used this term and explained it. And I thought it was really interesting that the same thing occurs with beekeeping. So it's called, an image memory. And we get image memories. And one of the image memories you develop as a beekeeper is how to see eggs in cells. The other image memories we get are what drones look like, what workers look like, and the other one is what queens look like. So you have to develop that image memory. And once you have it, you can do a lot. It's much easier for you to see those little hive structures once you have that memory. So it's a real thing. An image memory is a real thing. It's not your eyesight. It's nothing like that that's fading on you. Maybe it is. Like in my case, it is a little bit. But you can get to learn to see them better if you're, if you got that image memory. That's what new beekeepers have to develop that, by the way. Well, Joanne, so you say you had both situations.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And my guess is that if you look at that one that's got full of uncapped and capped honey, so that bees that die early in the winter and leave a lot of stores around usually have a high viral load. I mean, that's pretty predictable. And if you had a high varroa count, or you didn't manage varroa in that colony, or did you? How did you manage varroa in those colonies? The colony with the stores that were left behind, and the other one?
The one that had nothing behind, no bees, I didn't manage varroa at all.
Okay.
The other one, I did manage varroa. So
in how did you manage it? Like, did you treat or?
yes, yeah, I treated with I'm trying to remember what it is. It comes in a foil package. I'm blanking, but yeah.
Formic Pro, maybe?
Yes, yep.
Yeah, so you always have to check the efficacy of whatever it is you use. And yeah.
Well, I did the shaken with the powdered sugar thing.
Oh, powdered sugar, yeah.
Yeah, and it seemed that the treatment was effective.
So how would you define that? Effective?
Well, I did a varroa check a couple of weeks before, then I treated, and then I did a varroa check a couple of weeks after I treated, and there was a difference. There's fewer.
Excuse me?
There are fewer varroas,
Yeah, I mean, but the numbers are more important than a broad sort of gauge. You have to actually count them.
Yeah, I did. And honestly, I can't, I'm blanking on exactly what the numbers were, but it was clear that there were fewer. And so I felt, oh, this is good, because that was the first time that I actually treated.
Yeah, and you used powdered sugar, which is not that accurate.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to kill the bees, but actually, ultimately, I lost the whole colony.
Well, I'm not laughing at you. I'm just saying that that's the whole thing. Like, we go for blood tests all the time and kill millions and millions of blood cells, but we're saving our bodies by knowing that we have diseases.
No,
and that's the same thing you have to do with bees.
It's irrational. It's irrational. My thing about not wanting to kill any bees is irrational. I realize that.
Yeah, but when it's hard to even do an inspection without killing some bees.
Yes, I know. So anyway, so we had all this honey, capped and uncapped.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember when it was. this is last year, I'm trying to recall. I think by February, I knew there was nothing, nobody was there. Nobody, just the honey, no bees. No
Mhm.
dead bees, just honey.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's hard, so this is a sort of something that's worth discussing, is that the measurement of your Varroa is a science, and it's based on a protocol that was developed by scientists. And for it to be effective, you actually have to know a lot about it. You have to know, your starting Varroa count. You have to know what occurred 2 or 3 weeks later after you did your treatment. And you have to know the threshold numbers. And in the experimental colonies in universities, they keep their Varroa control under 1%. So that's a very, very low
That is low.
threshold. And then, I'm beginning to be an advocate of, for us anyway, for backyard beekeepers, I'm beginning to advocate for a treatment schedule with testing. So in other words, it's always good to know what your Varroa count is, but you can, as a backyard beekeeper, and especially if we get some of these extended release formulations out for our use, we can apply them over a long period of time and check Varroa at that point and see exactly what kind of management we're getting out of those application methods. But I think it's probably going to be a good idea to figure that out up front. We're not going to be beekeepers that ever live in Varroa-free environment. That's just not going to happen. I mean, so it's not in our lifetime. I mean, it may happen. It's curious why it hasn't happened, because
If they
it's
haven't,
explainable, but it's curious.
I mean, a Darwinian mutation just hasn't happened.
So it really, way we manage bees, we're actually not allowing that to happen. So we're preventing that by supporting weaker colonies and killing weak Varroa, making strong Varroa and weak colonies. So so it won't work unless everybody in the United States agreed not to treat. So now you got to get 4 million. Did you ever look at any one of those commercial beekeepers? They're like big and burly and ugly.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you can't convince them not to treat,
No.
so yeah, they'd be opposed to that.
Well, Bill, I met somebody in Washington State 2 weeks ago when I was out there visiting my grandchildren, and she was a beekeeper and she lived in Northwest Washington State. She said that her hives were surrounded by a forest and she's never treated them. She uses some essential oils.
So as long as if her hives are outside the flight range of any bees and she's surrounded by a forest, it still won't work. I mean, because what occurs is bees from other areas swarm and occupy hollows in trees next to her colonies. So no matter how I don't believe that, so I would have to see that to believe it. I mean, I'm sure she's been honest and thinks that she hasn't, doesn't have any Varroa or whatever.
I didn't argue with her. I just listened. She's been keeping bees for 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's good. But if you took her bee and put it in your colonies in your area, they'd be dead from Varroa in a couple of years. That's how it works. So we can't get away with it.
Yeah, I'll do a better job this year with, being much more scientific about.
Yep. Unfortunately, that's what's required.
The pre and post load.
And use alcohol. By the way, the mythology about powdered sugar is that the bees are fine. That's not the case. It gets into their spiracles, and there's a certain percentage of them that die also. So, all right.
Thank you for addressing that. I appreciate it.
No problem. What else we got here?
Bill, do you have any recommendations on reading about queen rearing for the spring?
Aha. So, yes, I do. And it's a book by Laidlaw. And I have it up here. Let me get it out. Hold on. Let me see where that is now.
Bill, are you going to raise your own queens?
We're going to
I'm
raise them in the
considering.
yard. We're going to raise them in there. Here's the book. Is this reversed type or do you see?
Yeah,
it?
that's good.
All right, Contemporary Queen Rearing by, this is the Bible by Laidlaw. It's a very cheap paperback. It has everything you would ever need to know about rearing queens. And he, is still the research scientist's reference is always to Laidlaw. He's sort of like the queen rearing inventor. The only thing, he put it all down on paper, and you'd be able to, he's got nice beautiful charts in there, and so if you want to read that over the winter time, you would be
That's exactly what I'm looking for, because I've been
Yeah.
reading, I read the thing that John Connor put out.
Larry, yeah.
It's tough to follow what he's doing.
Yeah. And well, it won't be easy to follow anyway, but we're going to make it easy for the first year. At the yard, what we're going to do is we're going to make our first attempts at queen rearing there are going to be to split out swarm cells into nuke boxes and fly them out that way. All right. So we're going to make swarm queens, and then from there we'll graft the following year. All right. But for the first year, we're going to show people how to make queens in their own yards with nuke boxes and swarm cells. And we'll take everybody that wants to come to the bee yard and learn about that this year. We'll take them through the delicate process of managing swarm cells into colonies before they swarm. All right. So, we'll try to keep the colony from swarming and also have them raise swarm cells for us and use them in nukes and fly them out and make queens. So it's an easy way to do it. All right. So, Michael wants to know, what does Michael want to know there?
Go to Corrine first, because Michael's
Okay, Corrine. So she wants to know if there's an advantage to package versus nuke this year. I've had trouble in Colorado with the packages needing to be treated right away. Mite-away quick strips, maybe out of date treatment. All right, Corinne, talk about that a little bit. What are you saying about the mite-away quick strips?
To be honest, in Colorado, we don't have too many other things going against us except for Varroa mites.
Yeah.
We don't have hive beetles, wax moths, a lot of things, because as you mentioned before, the moisture. I like to think that beekeeping is always hard. I think it was very easy in Denver compared to what I'm about to be up against here in Connecticut. But that's what I have with the most experience with treating mites is the mite-away quick strips. But with my mentors and everything, a little outdated. It's been 2 years. But anytime we've bought a package in maybe 2020, 2021, all of our packages, and we had a community apiary of 4 people, probably 20 hives. We all had to treat pretty recently after buying our packages. Like our mite counts were very high. We did use the sugar shake test, probably not that accurate as I've been learning more and more about, but we had to treat very early on with very new packages.
Where did the packages come from?
Oh, that's so funny. I just was looking through here. I have the list here of where I bought them. So I quoted some of them. We got, I think I actually have the receipt for it right here. They came from Apis Hives in Grand Junctions, Colorado.
Oh, okay. So that's where your packages were shook, huh? Right in Colorado. All right. So here we're going to get them from the south. So most of
Italian bees.
Excuse me?
They were Italian bees.
Yeah. So here you're going to get them from, we get them from Georgia and they do bring in some packages from California here too. And so, so what you will find with packages here is the same thing. You're going to have to treat them. So what I try to encourage people to do is install their package, let their queen get out on the comb, let her start laying, and before anything is capped, vaporize the colony one time and kill all the mites. So that's how that's one way to do it here. Very effective way to get it started with a very, very low mite count. You can do it a number of other ways. You cut out, go ahead.
Before anything's capped.
Yeah, you got to make sure this before anything's capped, and you really want your queen laying first before you do this, because you know, if you start pumping oxalic acid in a colony where there's no brood, you could make, you know, you could ask, you're inviting them to leave on you.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I think Corinne, you already applied for a mentor, right?
I didn't know that was a possibility.
Okay, so Dean put a link up for you.
Okay, awesome. Great, thank you.
And then Paul's reminding, if you want to do that, make sure there's a complete mailing address when you sign up.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, we got 60 mentors or some mentees or something running in our program now. It's a really successful program.
But Bill, we can always use more mentors, right?
We can use more mentors. Absolutely. Thank you, Dean. We can use more mentors, constantly use them. I'm going to take on some this year myself. And if they're in my area. And so we'll see what's happening. And we'll take them on at the bee yard.
Bill, do people vaporize packages?
Yes. So you vaporize a package. You can do that. I don't think it's as easy to do, Ralph, as it is once you've installed it and you catch it right before anything is capped. They won't abscond from a package, that's for sure. You know, it won't kill the queen, and but it's harder to get vapor inside that tight cluster than it is. Of course, you can knock them down and do it, I guess. But it's a little bit more dangerous to do that than it is inside of a colony, because we know how to control the vapor tools and stuff when it's in the colony.
Wouldn't it be more effective to do an OA drip?
You can, so on the label, if you wanted to do it with a package, you have to first spray lots of sugar syrup on that package. And see, sometimes this is not practical because it's cold, and you don't want to spray cold syrup on your bees, right? And then leave them in the garage overnight. So you're asking for trouble. So the way to do it according to the package is you first have to engorge them with syrup and then spray them with the oxalic acid solution after that, you know, a syrup and acid solution. That's why glycol is so much better, right? If you could use glycol, they won't eat it. But the reason that the package suggests you first use a sugar syrup is to engorge them so they won't eat the oxalic acid that you put on later on. We'll talk more about that when we get close to it.
Bill, Michael Thomas is asking, is anybody in Connecticut selling Connecticut raised packages?
No, there's no such thing, you know, in Connecticut. We don't have package bees that are ready for the package for, you know, that would be ready in the springtime for packages, because we have to go all the way out. We just don't have an industry. There's nobody I know that's selling packages. People here in Connecticut sell nukes, which they can raise later on, you know, but they're selling you a nuke that's kind of later on in the season and a little too late to get started. Package takes 10 weeks. A nuke will still take about 6 weeks to get up to speed, maybe 7 weeks. And so you could miss the main flow with a package, with a nuke, if you get it when we can deliver them here. You can buy them from other parts of the country and get them sooner. Can we not get overwintered nukes in CT? No, yes, you can. Can you not get them? Yeah, you can. You can get overwintered nukes in CT. Yep, you can, but very few people sell them, and those are very expensive. You know, I bring nukes through the winter all the time, and the best way is for you to become proficient at raising your own nukes and leave them in your own yard, and you have your own sustainable nuclear colonies, then when you come into the springtime, you have your own nukes and you can put them in if you need them. I was told Cedar Lane apiary, hen honey, they are shipped. These are shipped outside CT. I don't know if Cedar Lane apiary, hen honey. No, Hannon, he brings everything in. He's not shipping anything out, as far as I know, unless he's shipping stuff out. Yep, Hudson Valley Supply, and we have also good bee suppliers here in Connecticut. I mean, in Massachusetts also, that bring in good bee stock. We talked about them last month, and we'll talk about them again next month.